Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the motion pursuant to Section 48 of the Standing Orders, that aware that the communities have continuously established running institutions within their localities to address the inadequate physical facilities to support the attainment of universal access to education, and noting that the Kenya Vision 2030 envision progressive establishment of more schools, expansion and rehabilitation of existing ones in order to improve access to education. Further noting that huge sums of funds, particularly under the National Government Constituency Development Fund, have been invested in improving infrastructure in primary schools, acknowledging that in the recently introduced competence-based curriculum education system, pupils will transit to grade 6 to grade 7 and not class 8 as it was the case under 844 system. Concerned that the arrangement would compel students to travel for long distances to access institutions where junior secondary schools are based. Further concerned that the guidelines recently issued by the government directed that junior secondary schools be domiciled in the existing primary schools, yet most primary schools lack capacity to accommodate and effectively offer junior secondary schools curriculum. Deeply concerned that the guidelines were already developed and operationalized, this House resolves that the Ministry of Education to 1, urgently develop a comprehensive junior secondary school policy in order to regularize and anchor the guidelines under the Basic Act 2012 to ensure that junior secondary schools are established and operated in every primary school. 2, develop a clear implementation framework for the competence-based curriculum and junior secondary school level and provide for a funding plan for a successful implementation of the curriculum. Honorable Speaker, education is a very vital, is a vehicle for economic and social change. It's therefore important that any curriculum be constantly reviewed to keep abreast on the globalization of the labor market, Mr. Speaker, and of course the demands for acquisition of the 21st century skills. Mr. Speaker, many countries have shifted from knowledge-based curricula to competence-based teaching learning approaches. In Kenya specifically, the 844 system, Mr. Speaker, was introduced in 1985. But over time, it became apparent that the system had several noticeable flaws, and one of the main problems with the system was it was very theoretical, Mr. Speaker, and with the emphasis on passing examination rather than developing practical skills. It is in this that the government of Kenya introduced a competence-based curriculum, CBC, under the 2633 system in 2017. Mr. Speaker, the CBC approach to the education aimed at providing students with the practical skills and the knowledge that they can apply in real-world situations. It is designed to focus on developing competence of learners in a broad sense than just theoretical knowledge. The system also aims at equipping learners with the skills, knowledge, attitude, and values that are relevant to 21st century, Mr. Speaker. The new competence-based curriculum specifically focuses on 7 fundamental competencies namely, 1, communication and cooperation, 2, creativity and imagination, 3, critical thinking, Mr. Speaker, and problem solving, 4, digital literacy, 5, citizenship, 6, running to run, and 7, self-efficacy. Mr. Speaker, the start of 2023, this year, the school calendar in Kenya indeed marked a very important occasion with the first cohort of CBC runners to adopt the new curriculum in 2017, entering junior secondary school at grade 7. The implementation, however, has been met by a number of challenges, Mr. Speaker, and it is important we give a critical look into some of these challenges. One of the main challenges, Mr. Speaker, is inadequate infrastructure. And I am sure almost every member in this House do not have a laboratory for a junior secondary school in any of the junior secondary schools in our constituencies. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, no member who has a workshop for junior secondary school in any of the primary schools in our constituencies. Therefore, inadequate infrastructure can affect the implementation of these very critical and important curriculum. The infrastructure plan by the government has not been addressed the big enrollment transition from grade 6 to a total of 1,287,597 candidates, having started the Kenya Primary School of Education assessment for the first time in 2022. All these students are expected to join junior secondary school, but they have been faced with insufficiency of classrooms, laboratories, stationaries, workshops, and library needed for the use of runners. This can limit the ability to run and experiment, which can affect their academic performance adversely, Mr. Speaker. Another challenge, Mr. Speaker, is inadequate teachers training. Inadequate teachers training. You realize that teachers we have in our primary schools today were trained to teach in the old curriculum. Most of them have not gone through the training, of course, conducted by the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Teacher Service Commission, so that they can be able to handle this CBC curriculum at junior secondary level. The massive training and retraining of junior secondary school teachers is a major problem in the Ministry of Education and must thus be urgently dealt with, Mr. Speaker. The other challenge is the limited access to technology. One of the key requirements, or what this curriculum aims to achieve, Mr. Speaker, or the focus on these 7 fundamental competencies, one of them is digital literacy, Mr. Speaker. And you realize in my constituency, Bure North, Mr. Speaker, there is not even primary school which has a laboratory with computers. So, and this cut across the Republic of Kenya. So many junior secondary schools in Kenya have limited access to technology, making it difficult, Mr. Speaker, for the student to be abreast with the latest education trends and development as required by the curriculum. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, is lack of parental and community involvement in implementation of this curriculum. Some of the parents, Mr. Speaker, are not actively involved in their children's education, which can negatively impact on their children's academic performance and overall education outcomes. Also, we have realized Another challenge, Mr. Speaker, is overburdening the parent. The curriculum at the moment requires a runner at grade 7 is supposed to take 12 compulsory subjects and 2 optional choices, summing up to 14 subjects. These are very heavy workload that can put us a huge amount of pressure on students, and it may be difficult for them to keep up with the demands of their studies. These may make the students struggle to balance the academic work and other activities such as extracurricular activities or even rest, and can also lead to burnout, exhaustion, and poor academic performance. Many subjects taught at junior secondary level may take it challenging for the teachers to provide in-depth instructions and personalized attention to each student. This can result in superficial understanding of topics, limiting student ability to apply knowledge in real-life situations. With these challenges, Mr. Speaker, we need to have a way forward for the junior secondary school so that we can provide this country and we can be sure that our kids, our children who are at junior secondary schools are getting the desired results from this education system. Honorable Speaker, for junior secondary education to effectively be implemented, there is need to ensure that the following issues are entrenched in the implementation framework. One is curriculum development, which, of course, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development should be highly involved teachers and other experts and other policy makers during the curriculum change and the process to create a positive attitude and energy among them for the smooth transition of the grade 6 pupils to junior secondary. This involvement process would help in ensuring that the curriculum developed is not only up to date but also in line with the national education objectives. The other important is the teachers, Mr. Speaker. The Teacher Service Commission should deploy and recruit and post teachers to junior secondary schools. And at the moment, we have a big challenge of the teachers in junior secondary schools, Mr. Speaker. These teachers in junior secondary schools will perform duties as per the Basic Education Act. Adequate and qualifying teachers should be recruited and trained to teach in junior secondary schools, and they should be fully prepared for the transition on how to handle the grade 6 pupils transiting to junior secondary schools in mind of this CBC curriculum. This training should focus on methodology, content, and assessment of the competence-based curriculum. Considering that the primary schools teachers are more familiar with the CBC than the newly recruited secondary school teachers who have no clue of CBC, TSC, or Teacher Service Commission, Mr. Speaker, should come up with a remuneration package for the primary school teachers teaching at junior secondary school by appreciating them with a token, even if it's a small one. This will stop the gap. This will be a stopgap measure to manage teachers' shortage in the initial years. This will also help to avert redundancy of primary school teachers due to the shifting of 2 classes to secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, the running resources is a big challenge and we need to take care of it. Running resources such as textbooks, laboratory equipment, and technology should be provided to enable effective delivery of the competence-based curriculum in junior secondary school. The Ministry of Education should develop a framework to facilitate sharing and management of infrastructure among primary school and secondary schools that will be established in the same compound. Monitoring and evaluation, Mr. Speaker, is another thing which should be properly anchored by the Ministry of Education to ensure the curriculum is properly implemented. And it should be across in each and every junior secondary school in the Republic of Kenya. The involvement of the community and parents, Mr. Speaker, is an important component for the acceptability. Teachers and parents can cooperate to encourage student participation in extracurricular activities such as sport, music, drama, and crafts. Regular parent-teacher conferences can provide an opportunity for teachers and parents to discuss a student academic progress, behavior, attendance, and other issues. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, parents and teachers can work together to promote health and wellness of students. This can involve encouraging health, eating habits, physical activity, and regular medical checkups. Regular parent-teacher conferences could provide an opportunity for parents and teachers to discuss the progress and challenges of their children. Parents can share any concerns they have with the teachers and work together to find solutions. They can also cooperate to promote positive behavior and social skills among students. Teachers can share information on the behavioral issues with the parents and work together to address them, while parents on their part should be also reinforce good behavior and values at home. Mr. Speaker, many schools in our constituencies, this is something which is not happening. Mr. Speaker, the policy is required to be created by the Ministry of Education. There are quite a number of factors which need to be considered by the Ministry of Education when coming up with a comprehensive junior secondary school policy. And some of these factors are, one, the legal framework. The curriculum reform should be undertaken within the national registration informed by Article 53 of the Constitution, which recognizes free and compulsory basic education as a right for every child in the Republic of Kenya. Article 43 of Economic and Social Rights states that every person has a right to education. The fourth schedule mandates the Ministry of Education to undertake education policy, standard and curriculum. To actualize this provision, Mr. Speaker, various legal documents have been deployed and ought to be followed accordingly to the implementation of the junior secondary education. These include the Basic Education Act, Session Paper number 14 of 2012, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Act number 4 of 2013, and Kenya National Examination Council Act of 2012. In addition, the country provision for education should be guided by international pacts such as Sustainable Development Goals of 2015. The highlight of these policies include the provision of free and compulsory basic education that is reformed to inculcate interest and skills in science, technology, innovation, as well as environmental concerns for our vibrant economy. Number two, Mr. Speaker, which should also be considered by the Ministry of Education in coming up with a comprehensive junior secondary policy, school policy, is assessment and evaluation. A system of assessment and evaluation that is fair and transparent should be developed and implemented to monitor the progress of junior secondary schools runners. To develop more complete and fair runner evaluation process, there is need for focusing on both cognitive and non-cognitive attributes with fair balance between formative and summative summative assessment of runners. Other very important when considering this policy, Mr. Speaker, is funding. At the moment, the funding of junior secondary school in the Republic is wanting. Adequate funding should be provided by the government to ensure successful implementation of the policy. Many end teachers in our primary schools, especially in my constituency, Bure North and Great Bure North, we have a problem of funding. And there's no way, Mr. Speaker, we can be talking about CDF cannot be able to fund primary schools, but we fund secondary schools, tertiary colleges, and universities. And whereas the government policy is that we have a free primary education, but when you talk with the end teachers of primary schools, it's a serious problem of what is happening in our primary schools. So funding is one of great factor which need to be well focused by the Ministry of Education. Sustainability should be another factor. The policy should be designed to ensure sustainability by ensuring that there is a clear guidelines for the management and maintenance of junior secondary school. Governance, Mr. Speaker, governance policies should be adopted by the implementation of the curriculum. Reform where the Ministry of Education should strengthen streamlined governance structures to support implementation of the curriculum. It should also establish mechanisms for effective consultation, coordination, and evaluation of curriculum. You will find in most of the sub-counties in the Republic of Kenya, we only have one sub-county education director who is in charge of supervising or ensuring the governance of more than 100 primary schools in our constituency. There is need to increase the levels of governance within this school, junior secondary schools education curriculum. Access to curriculum support materials, public-private partnerships, inclusion of education, inclusion of equity in education. The government should promote inclusive education to ensure equity in education and training. This will help to address needs of runners with disabilities and vulnerable groups in nomadic and semi-arid areas, counties, and those living with extreme poverty and informal settlements. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, it is worth noting that CPC implementation and specifically transitioning to junior secondary schools continue facing challenges with lack of adequate running facilities, lack of adequate training of teachers on CPC, large class sizes, lack of adequate teachers, lack of adequate teaching running materials, ignorance, and lack of involvement by parents. There is thus need for the Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that there is a junior secondary education policy well-grounded under the Basic Education Act of 2012 and implementation framework for sustainability. It is against this background, Mr. Speaker, I wish to seek the support of this House and this development matter of urgent national importance regarding development of policy and implementation framework for junior secondary schools in Kenya, as well as regarding the funding of junior secondary schools in the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move, and I now request the Honorable Member for Kamukoji to second this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.